So my first motion capture was in 1990. See how I say 90 now? We're going back to ancient times. 1997, where I got a little bit of. I was working at Lucasfilm, and I got a little bit of motion capture that I downloaded, and I put it on some droids, and I had some dancing droids running around, and I was like, "This is the best thing ever!" And so we got to go in, and back then, I think the ILM stage. I moved to ILM from Lucasfilm, and the ILM stage, I believe, was about a $2 million stage, and they couldn't do hands. So it was. So this is this was still something that we had to hand animate the hands because it's so complicated. And I remember sitting at SGI. And one of the reasons I was really excited about Manus was that I sat at SGI a long time ago, and they had gloves. And this is 25 years ago that had haptics and had all these other things, but they were millions of dollars, like millions and millions. I have no idea how much that cost to do. And I just thought it was the future. And then it never happened until now. So the thing is that I was like, for 20 years, you're like waiting for someone to build hand things with haptics and motion and everything else. And I can tell you, I've done thousands of hours of motion capture. And the two things that just kill us are face and hands, right? The bodies we've got figured out. You put 36 prime 41, prime 40s or whatever into a scene, you're going to get the bodies. You get a couple bodies. But when you get into the hands, like someone playing the guitar or someone doing something else, this becomes really complicated because there's a lot of occlusion. There's a lot of little things happening all together that are very close. There's a lot of joints, so it's really hard to set up your all of your relationships with the pieces, and so it's really hard to do optically. And so when Nick and I saw Manus at SIGGRAPH. So we were blown away. And so Nick Justin and I were there. We were looking at it, I was like, oh, this looks amazing. So we've been talking about getting them on. Finally, we got them on. We've been trying to work through that, and we're just really, really excited to have them. We've got the business development manager for North America, Gerald van der Riet, and also product specialist, Arsene van de Bilt on the show. And we'd like to welcome you both to our show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi there, guys. Thank you. We appreciate being here. It's nice to meet you, Alex. We're looking forward to tell you all about these gloves. I'm Gerald, and this is Arsene, product specialist at Manus.
And where are you coming in from, just so our viewers know?
We are calling in from the Netherlands right now.
Fantastic.
Yes, it's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon here. So
it's very comfortable, very relaxed at end of the day. So
yeah. So no more calls to do right now. So we have full flexibility for you today.
That's great. And for everyone watching, if you've got questions, go ahead and throw those questions in. As you start to watch them, you'll probably start to try to figure out how you would use these. So tell us a little bit. How did Manus get started?
Arsene, you want to pick that one up? Arsene is the more senior colleague here.
So many years ago, the company was incorporated by several friends. They were still studying, and they wanted to make VR gloves. They thought they were going to change the world back when Oculus was coming up, or I should say before Oculus came up. They had the plan to do that. Along the way, the company pivoted a couple of times, and along that journey, Manus found its way into motion capture. And we've been doing this for some years now. I've been with the company for a little over 8 years. The company was incorporated almost 10 years ago.
And do you feel like, I will probably get to this, but do you feel like, you got started with VR and then you moved to motion capture, but we're getting close to maybe going back to VR?
I would say for us, when the company was incorporated, the focus was on consumer VR. The first pivot was to focus on the B2B, so for businesses doing training and simulation. And then kind of the third pivot was to do motion capture, but we continue to do VR for businesses, for simulation, for training. I think there's a graph, right, of hype, and I think in VR we have definitely gone through that cycle where there's a lot of hype, then there's a little bit of a cool down, and we're getting back. But it's interesting to see how the VR space will develop, especially with Apple releasing their new headset. That's the biggest thing happening recently.
So tell us about your gloves.
Yeah, let me tell you. We actually have the gloves on right now, and you see them at that screen on the back.
And I think it's important for people to understand this isn't capturing it and then someday I'll get the data. This is actually, you're delivering that data in real time.
Yes, this is live right now. And I'll tell you, right now, these gloves are talking to the software that's running on my laptop over a Bluetooth connection. And right there is just an extended screen that I've connected over HDMI. It's a live view of the software.
And and that's your software that we're looking at?
This is our own software. It's called Manus-Core.
Mm-hmm. And what's the frame rate?
Right now, well, on that TV, we can get to 60 frames per second, but our gloves can capture up to 120 frames per second if you wanted to.
And why would you want to oversample? If you're doing something for, let's say, 24 frames a second, why would you want 120?
Well, if you have highly dynamic movements, then you might want to get as many frames per second as you possibly can. It gives you higher fidelity and less cleanup afterwards.
Yeah, a lot of times we're shooting at least 120 frames a second for motion capture because we want to be able to, again, to your point, blend those back in. The idiosyncrasies inside of that, with a little bit of Butterworth or a little bit of other things, we can kind of blend all of those bits and pieces back together. So the handset, you put the glove on. Is there a lot of fitting that is required to get that glove to fit onto different hands?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge that we have at a glove company is adjusting for so many different hand sizes. You can have very small, delicate lady hands, and you can have, very big hands, mostly with gentlemen. And making one product that will fit all of them is something that requires, a lot of thought when you're designing your glove. So right now, what you see on my hand, we have just a liner glove that is on my hand, and then there's a strap on it. Mm-hmm. Maybe try to show it a little bit closer there.
Right.
And
what's the piece on the top? Is that the processor? Is that the transmitter and processor?
Well, actually, what is in here is a battery, and there's a coil that generates an electromagnetic field. And the way these gloves work is that you track the sensors that are on the tips of your fingers. You track that position of those sensors inside that electromagnetic field. And then we calculate with inverted kinematics, all the joint angles and everything else. So that's how you get to these results on the screen.
And I guess hands are, because they are, when they're working properly, because they only move in one direction, there's not a lot of ball joints unless something happened horribly. You can just say, if the point of my finger is in one place, there's only a couple of different ways for that finger to be, the point of that finger to be, or the tip of that finger to be in that place, right?
Yeah, that's correct. But then the power really of why you're getting such, fidelity with our finger tracking technology is that the solver, and that is.
And this is the IK solver.
Yeah, that's correct, and that's where the magic really happens. Tracking the position of a sensor inside of an EMF is not so hard, but then translating that into real hand data for animation is the hard part. Right,
and I guess the question is then what is it using to transmit? So just doing Bluetooth from that box so that box gets the data, and is it taking is the solver in the hand, or is the solver in the software?
No, the solver is in the software. We transmit over Bluetooth from this box to a nice simple small USB dongle, and which is connected over USB to my laptop right now, and we're translating the data that we're recovering from the technology live in the software on my laptop.
And what software does it work with? So it works with your software, obviously, but can you connect it directly to other pieces of software?
Well, this is one of the other challenges that we have, right? When we are just a glove company, so we don't really do anything in terms of body motion capture or face, but all of these pieces of technology, they do come together when you're doing a shoot. And so you have to make sure that they all can work together in harmony with each other. So our software only runs on Windows right now, but we also have to make sure that we integrate, with OptiTrack's Motif and with Vicon's Shogun, with Qualis's QTM or with Accent's MVN software. It's a pretty big landscape, and all of the different manufacturers have their own piece of software, and we have to make sure that we do integrate with those and that the data is streamed correctly into their pipeline as well. It's it's a challenge, to say the least.
And are you able to stream your data directly into something like Unreal?
Yes, we can. So straight from Manus Core, you can stream your data in Unreal. All you really need for that is a hand asset that has bones, and we translate movement from the bones in our software to the bones in Unreal.
Is there a way for you to set up I guess there's probably an Unreal quote unquote drop down, like for that, but is there so you're basically matching the motion, your raw motion that you're coming in your Manus Core, and then delivering that to Unreal in the format that it needs?
Yeah, so for Unreal Engine, we have our own plugin, and it allows you to either have a 3D mesh that accurately represents your own physical hand, or to represent a digital hand that has different dimensions, so to use retargeting. So there are different ways that you can use the data. Like it begins with capturing the finger data on the glove, and then through the software it can be translated to different hand models.
Can you just use your core to just capture data and just raw data that can be used some other way?
Yeah. So maybe I can give a little bit more extensive introduction about what the software does and the integrations.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the Manus Core software that we offer consists of two parts. You have Manus Core as a background application, which allows you to stream the glove data into integrations into different applications. And then there's the dashboard, which you can use to configure the glove, but also to use it to record. And we offer the ability to record in the software itself. We offer the ability for triggered recording. So when you use a different tracking system that is able to send trigger messages over UDP, our software can start to record, and you can synchronize it. And then you can export our data in different formats, including FBX, so animation data. And then we also have partnerships. We have integrations into, for example, like what Gerald talked about before, Accent's MVN. It's an inertial suit solution. And then we also have integrations with OptiTrack in their Motif software. You can live stream data into their Motif application and stream for Motif into their plugins. We have the same thing with Qualis's QTM coming up. We announced that and we showed that off at GDC in March earlier this year. And for Vicon, for their Shogun software, we have the ability to merge recorded applications. So we have a triggered recording support and we have a plugin. We currently don't have a live integration with them, which is something we would really like. And we're in discussion with. We have been for some time, but it's currently not there yet.
And I assume you support Motion Builder.
Yeah, so we also have those partners, all of them, they have plugins for Unity and Unreal and Motion Builder and a bunch of other stuff. So if a customer is using, for example, an OptiTrack pipeline, they can just use all those plugins. We also have our own plugins. So if they're not using a partner integration, they can use their own. They can use our own plugins for Unity, for Unreal, and for Motion Builder. We also have live streaming plugins where you can record or where you can retarget or do whatever you want with them. And on the XR side of things, we also have some partnerships and some integrations. We work with with a company called ESI. They do simulation software mostly for automotive. And so when auto manufacturers or truck manufacturers design their vehicles, they want to figure out if they can be assembled before they exist. And we also stream into that software, which is called I Do. Very aptly named.
Have you seen your stuff used in any kind of aircraft, like pilot training or anything else like that? There's some simulators, some virtual simulators that will build a cockpit for you, And
yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think either Boeing or another company used our gloves in the past. I don't know if they're actively using them at this moment, but we've seen them do that before. And we know that there are a couple of our customers that offer training. So, for example, there's a Canadian company called Blue Drop, and they offer training for airmen to do hoisting or to do rear gunner training, where the gloves have been used in combination with mixed reality. So they have physical guns or physical cockpits, and they lay on the floor and they figure out how they should hoist up cargo from a helicopter. It's quite interesting, quite unique, I think.
We've got a couple questions. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about your product. We got a couple questions coming in from our viewing audience. Let's go ahead and jump into the first one.
First one comes from J.J. McKenna in Santa Venetia, California. And J.J. asks, is there a way to use the gloves to capture the real-world feel of playing musical instruments, to either teach people what that feels like or to simulate the response for people who are playing virtual instruments?
I guess the question for you is that, number one, is do you find that there's enough resolution if someone's playing the guitar to really be able to have that guitar work, so to speak? Like it's, like not work, but that you'd really feel like they're actually, that's usually where motion capture gets to be difficult. Like, when Xsense first came out, the people would do these big dancing motions, and I was like, I just need, let me watch you shuffle your feet. And they were like, oh no, we don't want to do that. And I was like, that's the part that I want to see. And so little motions tend to be difficult. Do you find that you have enough resolution to do small motions for things like instruments?
Well, I think that, with these gloves, we have been seeing that more and more requests coming in from people that wanted to play some kind of an instrument or making an animation of that. Mm-hmm. And I would say that for those kinds of use cases, these gloves tailor really well because we can track even very small movements.
Yeah.
However, recreating feel, it's something that you would either have to break the laws of physics for, or you can maybe replace that sense of feel for something different. And for that, we do have a different glove, which is more tailored to ours, to the XR use cases. We exchange that feel, that haptic feedback for vibral tactile feedback. You can play around with that.
Can you explain what vibral tactile feedback is?
Yeah. So if you have a phone in your pocket and you receive a notification, it will buzz, right?
Right.
So with our gloves, we have an LRA motor on there, which gives the same time of feedback. And you can play around with the patterns and the strength of that feedback, depending on how you really make your application respond to, your interaction with certain objects in VR. There's a lot of possibilities out there that we could go into.
Do you think we're going to get to a point where we feel like I can put something out in front of me, and as I push in on it, I kind of feel the pressure on my fingers? Do you see that somewhere in the future?
Well, there are already pressure sensors out there in the market. There are, there's other types of feedback like texture and temperature. There's resistance feedback as well. We choose to, our philosophy of our company really is with the precision of the finger tracking. We think that's important. And we're looking into adding more and different types of feedback. So the experience is going to get better. And I'm not sure whether if you can really integrate all of those into, well, it's such a small space to work with, right? So it's going to be a challenge, but never say never, right, Alex?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, go Courtney.
You could have little tiny vibrators at the end of each finger for tactile feedback. I was wondering, besides instrument playing, that was mentioned in this question, are your gloves used for training five-fingered robots for dexterity and picking up items and so on? Is it used for training robots?
Yeah. Can I answer that, Arsene?
Sure.
That's a good question. Well, we have seen new market opening up for our company in the last year, and this was in the robotics market. I I think that, to start with, we are an aging population in Western Europe, but in the US, slightly less, I suppose. And one way to tackle that problem is that robots are going to be living next to us in our lives or in our workspaces, and they're going to be taking over some tasks in the household or in the factories. And think of, simple tasks of such washing the dishes is something that they might be doing for us someday. We have seen companies like Tesla, and I'm thinking which companies I can mention and which ones I can't. But Tesla and Sanctuary, for example, they have reached out to us, and they are exploring using our technology to drive dexterous hands of their robots, which is really cool. It's a cutting edge technology that they're using, and it's a bit futuristic, and it's almost impossible to grasp the reality. But it's for us as a company, it's very exciting right now.
Go, Bill.
Well, I was just fascinated by JJ's original question, and it caused me to think about pianists and how hand sizes are so different, and I'm interested in how you handled that. I just stumbled upon this graphic for famous piano players, and Rachmaninoff, I guess, had gigantic hands famously. And then you have another person who has a much smaller hand, and I just found that fascinating. And how difficult is it for you guys to figure this physicality of something that works for everybody when there's such a variation in hand sizes out in the real world?
I think that's a splendid question. It's something we have figured out, actually. Like I was saying, on the hardware, we have a one size fits all type of philosophy for our gloves. And, these liner gloves that I have on, they come in different sizes. And then we have other wearable accessories to fit the gloves physically to the hand of the user. But how does this then translate into the animated hand that is going to be part of the end product, your animation? In our software, we have the possibility to scale the hand in the software to the hand of the user. And this is done after calibrating the glove. It's really cool. So you could send all of that kind of data into your pipeline, and if you have big hands, you can send big hands into the rest of the pipeline. If you have small hands, the same applies.
Interesting. Now, if you were doing an animated piano player, I assume you would then shrink the keyboard such that the reach of a smaller-handed character might actually make that 13-key stretch. Is that it's just fascinating to me. I'm astonished at all this.
I mean, I'd say it depends what your goal is, right? Like if in reality a person's hand is really large or really small, then the gloves themselves and the tracking system you use are perfectly capable to recreate that digitally. But if you would like to change the appearance of the digital character, that's also possible.
So if you're doing retargeting from a large hand to a smaller CG hand, do you do the retargeting inside of your software, or do you oftentimes lean on something like a lot of the retargeting that we've done in the past has been Motion Builder? But obviously there's challenges when you start having someone that's, for us, it's bodies, big, much taller or much shorter than the CG version of themselves. But if you have hands different, are you using your own software to do that retargeting, or are you having external software do that?
So there are two ways to do that. So we have our own software where when you record, we record the hand itself, so the physical hand. And then when you stream out that data to one of our plugins, we have the ability to apply that data, to retarget that data to differently dimensioned hands. The same when you export it, you have the ability, we have a bunch of presets for a bunch of sized hands. For example, the metahuman hands. And the partner integrations that we have, it depends on the software, what they offer themselves. But you can stream into Motion Builder from our software. You can stream into Motion Builder through our integrations with MVN or Motive and so forth, and use the retargeting tools that are offered in those software.
So if you're using your plugin in Unreal, and I send, let's say you have an Unreal hand that's half the size of the captured hand, and you send that data in, is the plugin using your solver to solve the new positions of the fingers in as opposed to doing something that Unreal would do. It's using your solver to retarget those from those endpoints rather than sending. And what I mean by that is that the raw data, of course, is the rotational data, right? So we've got the inverse kinematic, but we have rotational data of all the joints. But you could send, I guess my question is, are you just sending the tips back to the plugin and letting the plugin inside of Unreal recalculate where the fingers should be, rather than sending rotational data and then trying to match it? Because it seems like sending the tips and then recalculating that would be more accurate.
Yeah, so there are two ways in that regard. So when you use our plugin, what it's doing essentially, you have to do some work beforehand, but you have to send the skeleton of that digital mesh into our software, which then understands like what are the dimensions of that hand, and then it will send back the rotation data and also scaling data for each bone. So we are able to adjust the dimensions of the digital hand if you want to do so. The plugin allows you to do that or not do that. Sometimes you want to stick to the digital character's dimensions, but sometimes the accuracy of the actor, you want to represent that. You can also do that. So we do it by taking the skeleton that you use, sending it to our software, and then sending all the data, the rotation data and the scaling data back.
Got it. Next question.
That, of course, is based on the fingertip sensor data, and also that's internally how the retargeting is driven.
Oh, that makes sense. Next question.
Rob Collins in Kansas City, Missouri asks, do the finger sensors get confused if you have two gloves close together?
Arsene?
Yeah, so no, we can show you. In our software, we make sure that you can, or I should say, on a hardware level, on a firmware level, and on a software level, we have done some things to make it possible to use multiple gloves at the same time. It's also one of the few patents the company holds, is to make sure that this works with a magnetic field.
Do you have any issues because it's using magnetic fields? Are there certain kinds of materials or surfaces or objects that you don't want in the room when you're capturing, or near your gloves when you're capturing?
We would like other electromagnetic fields or magnetic fields to not exist because that's the underlying technology. In reality, we've written firmware and software to make the effects of other magnetic fields or electromagnetic fields lesser. But there are some limitations in that regard. So, for example, power supplies, those kind of things, they will interfere with the magnetic field that is measured by the sensors. So we recommend customers, when they can, to not use the gloves near power supplies, those kinds of things, generating magnetic fields.
Of course, I'd be really interested in seeing like the effect, like it could be used in a sci-fi where the effect of someone's hand like losing control, and you could like put a rare earth magnet out there and just start reaching for it and having the fingers all kind of doing something. It could be a feature, not a bug. So
it's definitely something you could use. So for us, like the two kinds of interference that exist are magnetic fields, so static fields that don't change, and they will either pull the fingers together or they will make the fingers go out. And once you remove your hands from that interference, the sensors themselves will not be interfered. You don't need to recalibrate. It just goes away. The interference stops. For electromagnetic fields, basically what they do is they kind of create like a fluctuating interference. Right. So it looks like your fingers are vibrating or moving.
I think it could be a good effect. As someone who works in visual effects, I think just the response to that would be an interesting. We use things like if you're doing design for sound design, you might use feedback, things that we would consider normally problematic. The response of it, because it'll be organic, it'll be some kind of, it's digital, but it'll be this kind of something that would be hard to animate because it'd be vibrating and doing a lot of things on its own. Anyway, I'm very interested in that. Go ahead, Courtney.
I was wondering if permanent magnets create a problem, or is it just you just have to worry about a fluctuating magnetic field, like an alternating magnetic field, like AC transformers and so on?
Yeah, so both of them have created a certain kind of interference, but the effect is different. So with a permanent magnet, the field will just deform, and your fingers will be pulled closer or further away. An electromagnetic field will create like fluctuating interference. So the effect looks different.
Because they're using a lot of these, rare earth magnets to keep laptops closed and to keep your pouch and your phone closed, etc. So those little tiny powerful magnets could be a problem.
I'd say smaller magnets are not really a concern. So many like electronics, they use like really small neodymium magnets or something. That's not really any concern. It's mostly like larger magnetic fields that create issue. If you have a steel pipe or if you have a gaming laptop, something along those lines.
Next question.
Brad Woodall in Boston, Massachusetts wonders, could the gloves be used to analyze athletes, specifically quarterbacks, pitchers, and so forth?
Have you tried that?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's already being used in baseball, where people use our technology to record grips onto the baseball. And then I learned all of these the other day. There's a certain grip for a curve ball. There's a certain grip for a straight ball. And we are talking to a couple of companies that are looking to use our technology to understand what grips each top player in the Major Baseball League, MLB, MBL, what is it?
MLB,
Major League Baseball,
mm-hmm.
and
MLB is using, and
the NFL for quarterbacks.
Exactly. And they're looking to record that type of information with our gloves so that I could either commercialize it for people that are trying to, get better at throwing balls, I suppose, but it's not our type of sport here in Europe, but
yeah, exactly. The interesting thing is that, like you when you're taught to pitch, there's this, you're grabbing onto it, as a fastball like this, and as a, on a curveball, you might be putting it to here, and then it's how you're, and potentially you're coming up like this and rolling over. And all of those things are people talk to and they tell you what to do and they try to do it, but it's happening so fast that when I grew up doing it, it was a little bit of a witchcraft, and so it's really interesting, the idea that we could actually get the motion of the actual motion of a curveball that we observe, it felt like it curved. Yeah. Whereas, or any of these, and then be able to actually see where the fingers were and what they actually did. Because I think we're going to find that there's a lot of minor motion that's going on there that we're not seeing.
Well, even capturing at 120 frames per second, it still goes really fast in that recording. It's less than a second and the ball has already departed your hand. And for them, what's really interesting to understand is what exact moment did the ball stop touching the hand, or did it, there's no more contact? What moment is it really traveling through the air? Or was there any type of minor motion in either in one of the fingers or the arm that is influencing the trajectory of the ball? So it's something we're trying to help in with and bringing more insight, also in line with what every top sport is doing right now, is understanding everything to a very detailed level and to make performances better.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody who said that a high school, like a top high school athlete, could outdo most of the Olympics 100 years ago. like most of the Olympics, because there's so much data, and they have even what's trickled down to high school beyond the professional levels, because we're paying, if you look at how someone ran in 1924 and compare it to the way they run now, all the data that you're talking about, all that motion capture data, slow motion data, understanding of biomechanics has completely changed the sports, and done things at a level that you couldn't even imagine, 100 years ago. It's kind of amazing. Next question.
Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California is up with this one, and he's curious about what the difference is between your Quantum and Prime gloves.
Gerald?
Well, they both work with very different types of tracking technology, right? So the Quantum, which we released roughly a year and a half ago, it comes with an EMF type of tracking, and we solve the skeleton through, IK. The Prime still uses the technology that we used to rely on, or we have relied on for so long, and it uses forward kinematics. And instead of an EMF, it uses a flex sensor which, well, the way that works is very simple. The more your finger bends, the more resistance is recorded, and that number translates to a certain type of finger position. That's the main difference. And then the other difference is a little bit in price, obviously, and in precision. The Quantum is the more precise glove. Some of our reviewers, they go ahead and they put numbers that everybody can understand, and they, like, in percentages of, how clean or how precise the fingers can be. And they say that the Quantum can be 98, and they say that the Prime is 75% clean. Well, we haven't really reviewed those types of things, but this is when they benchmark it, to each other or to the competitors type, gloves. And that's what we have gotten in terms of feedback from the market.
Arsene?
I think in addition to that is that Gerald explained the flex sensors in the Prime series gloves. It also how the company started, and it was a very accessible technology. So it's a resistance-based sensor. It measures how much it is bent. Some years ago, we also started adding IMUs, so orientation sensors to it. And that allowed us with the current models to also bend backwards and to splay the fingers, those kinds of things. But I think the difference is also like the form factor or the way it's worn or the audience that we try to reach with it. The Prime series gloves are really oriented at being really easy, really accessible to use, where accuracy is not as important, but the ease of use is more important. And for the Meta gloves, the people who use the Meta gloves, they really want to get the best kind of accuracy, and they don't mind that it takes a little bit more time to put on the sensors on the fingertips. The advantage of the magnetic field tracking is its accuracy, but it's also the versatility, because as long as you attach the finger sensors to the tip of the finger, you can do whatever you want. We've heard about interesting use cases on animals where they want to use this tracking technology because it's really difficult to do it any other way. That would be impossible with our Prime series gloves, for example, or optical tracking might be difficult.
That's interesting. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next, and Douglas wonders, has most of your market been for industrial/military/aerospace use cases versus entertainment?
Well, right now I think our bread and butter really is with entertainment and motion capture. Studios, VFX studios and motion capture studios in Hollywood, but also a lot of them in Canada and Montreal, Vancouver. We're seeing that they're coming this side of the ocean as well. It's still a growing market despite, the hardships that we have had, but that has been our bread and butter for at least, the last 4 to 5 years, I would say.
I'd say in the life of the company, like the first 5 years or so was really focused on XR, so on VR and training, those kind of things. So in the lifetime of the company, maybe 50-50 or so.
Yeah.
And now with robotics, we also see like the focus of our customers shifting. So it's interesting for us because we kind of see new markets emerge where there's a need for this kind of technology that wasn't really that big before.
Yeah, it tends to follow the trends a little bit. So VR is one of the first trends that we have had in the lifetime of this company, and then Metaverse took over, and then for Metaverse, people wanted to be interacting with each other, in a Metaverse, and then animation took over as well. And now what we're seeing really is, new trend coming up is robotics and AI, and our gloves are being used to train not only robots, but, machine learning algorithms and that type of stuff. So
have you seen anybody do, one of the things that Moog has done Moog has done is they've got a lot of stuff in the AR, in the Apple Vision Pro, where you're just using the gestures that you have available to you. It seems like you could do with their synths and what they've been doing with their software. It seems like the gloves would be a perfect match to a lot of those, of being able to create different kinds of instruments that maybe don't exist in the real world. It's not trying to make them play guitar, but having those motions and being able to have them affect, and build music with something that is completely separate from trying to reproduce something from the real world. Anyway, Courtney?
Yeah, we haven't had a focus on it, but it's definitely possible to do anything like that. The accuracy of the data.
I have a person that you need to meet, so we'll talk about that later. So anyway, we'll talk. We've had them on the show, so we'll put you guys together. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was wondering if you guys were going to think about moving into the consumer market, but I don't know what the price point is on the device and if it could be made cheaply enough to put into an affordable consumer market, or you would have to be stuck into the Vision Pro applications or something. But
on your website, you have some relatively cost-effective solutions, right? Some that are in the hundreds of dollars.
Well, if you looked on our website and you've seen something for a couple $100, then you've seen some of the accessories that we offer together.
Oh, those are accessories. Those aren't actual. yeah, exactly. What's the so let us know what's the basic cost for the Prime and the Quantum, so people can level set what these cost.
You start with around $3,000, and it can go up to $9,000 if you wanted to get the high end with all of the accessories as well.
Okay, so $3,000 is the Prime. Right.
Yeah.
And then the Quantum with all the bits and pieces. And is that for one hand or two hands?
It's a funny question. So many people ask it because they think they're only going to get one glove, and then we would have to have separate supply chains for left and right hands. But you always get a pair. Okay. So,
darn, I got two left hands.
Yes, you wouldn't believe the questions people ask us when we are at trade shows. So, a little anecdote is I think is always funny is people that have deformations on their hands, right? So, my dad misses, his index finger, and then we do encounter such type of people in the trade shows as well, and they ask us whether if we can try the glove and what happens if it calibrates. And the funny thing is that our software will always assume that there's 5 fingers, but if one of them is not there, then you will get 3 bones, but it will be minuscule. You will almost not be able to see them. But they're still there, so magically, you've been healed, but not really, right? So,
mini finger.
Yeah.
Next question.
Eduardo Augustine is back from Panama City. Eduardo says, how is the touch feedback? Does the glove capture the force feedback as data to replicate it for sending vibrations back to the viewer?
Well, how the feedback is, it's vibrotactile feedback. And again, it's like, when your phone gets a notification, it buzzes a little bit and, you feel that vibration. But where, with the Prime 3 and the way it's being used by bigger industrial companies is if you have a head-mounted display and you wanted to simulate some kind of, let's say, a work process in a factory on an assembly line, then they try to bring that as close to reality as possible. And then with a glove that offers you that kind of feedback, it enables you to continue looking forward in front of you and then grabbing the objects that are outside of your field of view. Yeah. The funny thing is that if you ever go to a trade show, that is VR oriented, what you will see is people with headsets on and they're all following their hands around, like it's Michael Jackson in a zombie song, in a Thriller song. And with a glove that offers haptic feedback, you would not need to follow your hand. You could grab an object that's not in your view and then it would buzz, and you get a confirmation that you're actually interacting with the object, and then you grab it put it in front of you. Then you work with it. So it brings it closer to reality, and that's the type of feedback that we offer.
And it is, when you say it buzzes, it's buzzing on the top of your hand, not at every finger?
No, on each and every finger separately.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's great. Yeah. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Mickey Makachor in the Philippines. Is there a T-pose equivalent for hand capture retargeting?
So there's a very short answer to that. Yes and no. So the T-pose is very clear
Yeah.
for everyone, I suppose, or mostly everyone. For finger retargeting, you kind of see three different kind of things, I suppose. It's either with a hand like this, with the nails of the fingers pointing that direction, so towards the camera, so up, so to say. Then the thumb, depending on the workflow, is either outward or upward. And then there is also retargeting workflows with the thumb out like this. And it's unfortunate that it is not as clear as with the T-pose. I'd say in that regard, more and more, it has become more and more common to also use an A-pose, which introduces the same kind of issues.
Yeah.
So, but it depends on the workflow, on the integration. There are different ways.
It's interesting, the Apple Vision Pro, as you probably know, it's interesting. They give you a form to put your fingers in. Like it just says, put your hands up, and and you find yourself moving your hands to the, to where you need to get to. So it's interesting. Yeah. Next question.
John Snyder comes to us from Reno, Nevada this morning. How much do the gloves weigh, and do you see users needing frequent breaks when their arms are extended due to the additional weight?
I looked it up just to answer the question. So the Meta gloves that I'm currently wearing weigh 138 grams. The Prime 3 weigh 134 grams. I don't know what that is in ounces.
Yeah, me neither.
It's not the kind of feedback we typically get, that users get exhausted from wearing the gloves.
Yeah.
I would like to say that depending on the use, so if you're using it for motion capture with an optical system or inertial system, there's really no additional weight added to the hand. If you're using the gloves in a VR system, you're probably adding a VR tracker on top of the hand. That does add some weight.
Yeah,
I think in most cases the headset itself is a limiting factor to the comfort of the user, not so much the weight of the glove or the tracking accessory on top of the hand.
Yeah, I have to say that I haven't done it with that sensor, but I've worn a fair number of gloves for these and definitely didn't notice it. Like they were bigger than these ones are, and we worked with them all day. And there were other things that got us tired or other things that caused problems, but the gloves were not the impact on our how long we thought we could do that. Next question.
Josh Kaufman, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, comes up next. Do the mocap gloves cooperate or replace other motion capture tracking methods, i.e. body or environmental tracking for the rest of the talent?
So I assume that the question means if the rest of the body is also captured through the hand. Is that the question?
Is there any data that it has as far as hand position that could potentially be solved?
So the gloves themselves are really good at tracking your fingers. Where the hand is, where the rest of the body is, the gloves do not track. So for motion capture, it is really intended to be used alongside another tracking system.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Courtney.
It's like you said, right, Alex, at the beginning, finger tracking and solving that for animation, it takes a lot of time, just like the face. And some people say that it's the last barrier of motion capture is really the hands. This is what we solve, and that's the only thing that we track is the finger movement. We leave the body tracking to our partners who have
to the experts
specialized in that. Yeah. So
I mean, the body tracking has been pretty accurate for a very long time. With a Prime system that's what I used to own, was a Prime system from OptiTrack, and with 36 cameras, we were getting less than a millimeter of accuracy. I mean, it was very, very accurate, but what really killed us was the fingers and faces. Was this thing that just takes an enormous. There's just so many little things going on. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah.
So are you on the hands that you're showing there on the screen? So you're not the point of view that we're seeing those hands from. Is that just calculated in 3D space? It is tracking the position of your palm, not just the fingers. Does it track the position of the palm in 3D space? In other words, your point of view, moving it away from you and toward you, it's always staying in the field of view.
Yeah.
So it's not moving in space; it's just relative to the fingertips. The palm is tracked.
Yeah, that's correct. We track the we decide the orientation of the hand during the calibration process. The first pose where you put your hand on a horizontal surface, that is, our zero, and from that moment you start turning your hand around, it will move along with you.
So it calculates the position of the palm from the position of the fingers, then inverse kinematically.
Yeah. Well, we're tracking the position of the sensors on the tips of the fingers towards the back of the hand,
Right.
where the coil is. So.
And is there any plans for? We've talked about tactile feedback on one of the palms. About pressure sensors, do they contain any type of pressure sensors in the end of the fingers so they know how hard you're grabbing something or how much pressure is being exerted if you're picking up something in the real world?
It's not something we currently offer with either of our gloves. We are always looking, and exploring new experiences that we can offer, and it depends on what the customers ask from us, and whether if there is a real business case to build out of it. We are aware of pressure sensors, and it's something we might
especially
do in the future,
remote control of robotics. That's very important. You don't want to crush somebody with a robotic hand.
Yeah. Teleoperation is, in that sense, is important that you do have an idea of how much force you're putting into the objects that you're interacting with.
So for the robotics use case, what we know or how it can be used is that the robotic hand itself has pressure sensors, and then the haptic feedback on the Prime Series gloves can be used to represent that feedback back to the user. But that's different than measuring the physical pressure you're exerting with your own fingers, of course.
Got it.
Next question.
JJ McKenna in Santa Venetia, California is back with this one. Have you considered motion cloning haptic response, where the gloves could provide feedback for another human to replicate the movements of another performer or unreal puppet, so that, for example, Neo could really learn Kung Fu?
So
I haven't watched The Matrix, guys. I'm not sure what you're talking about. So
well, there's your homework for the week. We promise it's not too bad of a movie. It's okay. A couple of us have seen it a couple times. So.
So on a software level, we allow anyone using our plugins to control the haptic feedback. So replicating any kind of vibro-tactile feedback is definitely possible. This specific use case, I don't think we've considered internally.
Learning Kung Fu. Well, but if we see you at SIGGRAPH in a couple of years and you're saying, here's how to learn Kung Fu, we'll know that we had an impact.
All started here.
Yeah. Gerald and Arsene, thank you so much for your time. It's really, really great to have you here. We're really excited about your product.
Well, thank you guys for having us. And, I just wanted to say that in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be relocating to LA. And if anybody really wants to try the gloves, reach out to me. We can set up a quick meeting and we can play around with expensive technology. So that'll be fun.
Love that.
Way cool. Watch out.
Yeah, exactly. We may take you up on that.
Road trip.
So, yeah, exactly. I'm in LA often enough. I might be able to make that actually work. So we'll see if we can't catch up with you both.
Let's do it.
Thank you again. And thanks to our panelists who make the first hour and the second hour work. We can't do this without you. So thanks so much for your contribution. And thanks to the producers who asked all these questions from around the world. I think we covered 3 or 4 continents of questions today. So thanks to all the producers who watch and ask all the questions that we use during the show. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end that helps prep people for this show, develop the software that we use for the show, actually cut the show, put all those bits and pieces together. This is all volunteer. This is a small village of people that come together every day to make this happen. And we really appreciate all of your contribution. We traveled today. If we had the Tulalak traversal, if we had traveled around the world to ask these questions where each person had to ask their question from their home, it would have been 67,000 miles, 108,000 kilometers, and that is 529 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
Great
Thanks,
demo, guys. Thank you.
That was good.
Thanks. The new Nintendo Power Glove.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, yeah, really interested in some of the aircraft. I have some folks that might be interested in some of the aircraft stuff. So anyway, I produce some specific things there. So we'll talk more.
Great. All right. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right. See you.
Goodbye.